My supervisor told everyone in our morning huddle. If she spent less time being sensitive and more time working, maybe she'd be worth half her salary. I bit my tongue as he tossed my report on the floor, stepping on it and smirking. Clean up your mess, princess. So I cleaned it up, along with every email, every timestamp, and every mistake he ever signed off on, and sat back as corporate launched a full audit with his name all over it. I've worked at a logistics company in Cleveland for 3 years now. It's not glamorous. Concrete floors, fluorescent lights, buzzing from old computers, and the kind of coffee that tastes like burnt dirt. But it's a paycheck, and for a while that was enough for me. I'm a project coordinator. I manage delivery schedules, coordinate teams, and pull together weekly reports that keep the place running. I'm good at what I do. Quiet, focused, organized. I don't gossip, don't cause drama. I just do my job. People used to respect that. But not Dan. Dan Kirkley, our supervisor, made life hell. He walked around like he owned the place. Late 40s, balding with that slicked back look that screams. I peaked in high school. He used to play football. He mentioned it all the time. Still wore his class ring like it meant something. Dan didn't like smart women. Especially not ones who were better at their job than he was. I was both. He'd make jokes, loud ones, in front of everyone. Careful, fellas. Don't upset her or she'll file a complaint. Or, why are you so emotional all the time? Must be that time of the month. I reported it once. Nothing happened. The woman from HR smiled too much and told me to document the behavior. I did. But nobody cared. I learned to keep quiet. Smile when he mocked me. Take it on the chin. It wasn't fair, but I had rent to pay. I kept telling myself it wasn't personal. Until it was. That Monday morning changed everything. We were in our usual huddle, 13 of us standing around in a circle near the main office door. Everyone had their coffee. I had mine, plus the folder I spent my whole weekend working on. It had charts, delivery timelines, issue logs, clean and detailed, exactly what Dan asked for. I handed it to him. He didn't even look at it. He said, loud enough for everyone to hear. If she spent less time being sensitive and more time working, maybe she'd be worth half her salary. Then he tossed my folder on the floor. And stepped on it. Smirked. Clean up your mess, princess. Some people laughed. Not because it was funny, because they were scared not to. The rest just looked away. I bent down, picked it up slowly. My hands were shaking. I couldn't look anyone in the eye. I thought I was going to cry. But I didn't. I didn't even speak. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and stared at my computer screen. Then I started collecting everything I had. The first night, I pulled up all the reports I had stored on my drive. Hundreds of them. I started looking for inconsistencies. Anything Dan had changed. Anything he'd approved that didn't line up. I found one within 2 hours. A logistics error from 6 months ago. One of our trucks had taken an illegal route to meet a tight delivery window. It got into an accident. Dan told everyone it was the driver's fault and buried the paperwork. But I had the original email. Dan was the one who told dispatch to change the route. I flagged it. I started staying late at the office, but not to work. I was scanning, screenshotting, printing emails, copying files to an encrypted USB. I sent everything to myself from a dummy email account I created just for this. I wasn't just looking for what Dan did to me. I wanted everything. I found 17 forged documents. I found deleted shift records that violated labor law. I found expense reports with made-up numbers and vendor invoices signed by Dan without a second signature, which was against policy. I found time-off requests from employees that Dan approved verbally, then punished them later for being absent without notice. I found 3 emails with my name forged on them. He'd blamed me for delays that were his fault. It was all there. Every lie. Every mistake. Every fake approval. I organized it in folders. Financial fraud, HR violations, safety hazards, forgery. I waited for the end of the quarter when audits usually happened. It was the perfect time. The company would be paying attention to numbers. Then I dropped the whole thing, anonymously, into the corporate ethics inbox. I even included a breakdown of where they could find the original files on the internal server. 3 days later, everything changed. The compliance team from corporate showed up that Thursday. 2 women and a man in suits. No warning. They walked in, asked for the conference room and locked it down. One of them carried a laptop with the company seal on it. The other 2 had clipboards. Dan laughed it off. He actually said, "Must be here for our superstar." He looked at me when he said it. I ignored him, pretended to be busy. But I watched them. They started asking for files, internal reports, shift logs, routing records, HR complaints, budget sheets. Dan was called into the room at noon. He didn't come out until 6 p.m. When he did, he looked pale, sweaty. His eyes darted around the room. He didn't speak to anyone, just grabbed his jacket and left. The next morning he didn't show up. Then came the email. Supervisor Dan Kirkley is currently on administrative leave pending review. People started whispering. I didn't say a word. Dan was gone, but things didn't get better right away. People started acting strange around me. They didn't know I was the one who sent the files, but they knew something. Some looked at me like I was dangerous. Others like I was a hero. But nobody said anything out loud. Our interim supervisor, Marlene Adams, came in from the Pittsburgh branch. Older woman, sharp eyes, quiet voice. You could tell right away she didn't mess around. She walked in, shook hands, and got straight to work. On her second day, she pulled me into a private meeting. I thought I was getting fired. Instead, she closed the door and looked me dead in the eye. "We're not here to punish good people," she said. "But we are cleaning house. If you have more, now's the time." I didn't say anything, just nodded. She slid a card across the table. It had a number for the corporate investigation team. "This goes straight to the top. Use it." I went home that night and sent another package. This one had witness statements. Over the last few weeks, I'd started quietly talking to people. A few coworkers who'd been on the receiving end of Dan's temper. One woman, Jamie, said he cornered her in the break room once and made comments about her clothes. Another guy, Luis, said Dan threatened to mess with his hours if he didn't cover for him during a botched shipment. I didn't record anything, but I took notes. Dates, details, names. I sent it all in. That's when things got messy. About a week later, someone started messing with my stuff at work. One morning I opened my desk drawer and found my folders were gone. Not stolen, just rearranged. Like someone had flipped through them looking for something. Another day I found my password written on a sticky note on my chair. I never wrote it down. That one made my stomach turn. I told Marlene. She didn't flinch. She told IT to lock my account and reissue new credentials. Then she asked me, "Have you noticed anything else?" I told her about the people avoiding me. The weird glances. The way some folks stopped talking when I walked by. She nodded. "That's fear," she said. "Not your problem." That same week someone else was fired, Joe, one of Dan's favorites. He was a team lead. Loud. Always laughing at Dan's jokes. The kind of guy who liked to throw his weight around. People said he was protected. Turns out he was dirty too. Approved fake overtime for a buddy of his. Took kickbacks from a vendor. He left in handcuffs. The mood in the office shifted after that. People got quiet, focused. The gossip stopped. But the fear didn't. Then came the audit results. Corporate sent out a long email, too long for most people to read. But I read every word. Dan had committed multiple violations of policy and ethics, including falsified records, misuse of authority, and harassment. The company was cooperating with law enforcement for potential charges. Then the part that hit me hard. We recognized that a culture of silence allowed these violations to continue unchecked. We are implementing new reporting protocols and third-party oversight to ensure accountability at all levels. They were admitting fault. Kind of. But the biggest twist? A week later, I got called back into Marlene's office. I thought maybe it was another check-in. Instead, she slid a letter across the table. It had the company logo on top. "Promotion offer," she said. "Assistant Operations Manager. It's yours if you want it." My chest tightened. I'd been passed over for promotions before. Always told I wasn't quite ready. And now here it was, after everything. But before I could say yes, she said something else. "There are people who won't like this. Some of them are still here. If you take it, you'll need to be twice as strong. Can you handle that?" I looked her in the eye and said, "Yes." I took the job. And within a few days I started noticing things I hadn't before. Like how Dan wasn't acting alone. There were emails, old ones, from higher-ups who approved shady things too fast. Expense reports that went untouched. HR complaints that got closed without follow-up. I started pulling old files again, this time as a manager, with more access. And what I found? Dan was just the beginning. Once I stepped into the assistant operations manager role, I saw things differently, not just because of the title but because of the access. I had visibility into systems, documents, and communications that used to be sealed off. I wasn't looking to stir more trouble, at first, but then I found a series of old emails between Dan and a man named Victor Reardon. Victor wasn't someone I had ever met in person. He worked out of the Chicago regional office. His name was buried in upper management emails, the kind of guy who showed up twice a year in a suit and smiled too much during budget meetings. But these emails between him and Dan? They were strange. In one of them, Dan said, "Took care of that shipment reroute. Had to change the logs again. Don't worry, I made it look like Claire's team dropped the ball." Victor replied, "Keep it tight. You know how to handle the noise." That was me, Claire's team. I'd been blamed. Directly. I checked the date. That was the week we lost a $50,000 shipment. Our department got raked over the coals for it. I'd spent 3 weekends trying to fix the mess, and it wasn't even ours to fix. It was them. Dan and Victor had worked together to cover it up. I started digging into Victor's name. Quietly. Carefully. Turns out Victor wasn't just some regional VP. He'd worked in logistics strategy for over a decade. Had his hands in multiple warehouses. Approved budgets, vendor contracts, routing software, you name it. I started cross-referencing the fake approvals Dan made with company vendor lists. Some of the approved expenses had Victor's signature on them. The deeper I went, the uglier it got. Vendor kickbacks. Routing fraud. Insurance scams. Not small ones. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over 2 years. And Dan had been the front man, the messy one, to take the fall. But Victor? He was clean on paper. Protected. Unless someone pulled it all together. That night, I stayed at the office until 11. I wasn't scanning and emailing this time. I was building a full report, charts, screenshots, email threads, transaction history, everything. I even pulled audio from a recorded Zoom call where Victor casually approved a reroute that broke company policy. I saved it all to a secure drive. This time, I didn't send it to ethics. I sent it to corporate legal. Then I waited. 3 days passed. Nothing. 4. On the 5th day, I got an email. Not from legal. From Victor. Subject: "Let's talk, no greeting. No signature. Just a sentence. I think you're looking at things the wrong way." I didn't respond. I forwarded the email to legal and copied Marlene. The next morning, Victor showed up in Cleveland. He walked into the building like nothing was wrong. Suit and tie, smile like plastic. Said he was in town for some check-ins. He didn't know I had already blown everything wide open. He called a meeting with me and Marlene in the conference room. Said he wanted to clear the air. The minute we sat down, he dropped the act. "You think you're clever," he said to me. "You don't know what kind of damage you're doing." Marlene didn't say a word. Just hit record on her phone and laid it on the table. Victor's face changed. I didn't speak either. I let him sweat. He left 15 minutes later, red-faced and quiet. By the end of the day, corporate legal called me directly. They were launching a second investigation. Internal fraud, extended network. I was told to keep quiet, stay alert, and document everything. I was in the middle of something bigger than Dan now. Bigger than just one warehouse. And I wasn't sure how many people were involved. But I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. The second investigation moved fast. Once legal got involved, they didn't just look at Victor. They pulled all vendor contracts, shipment records, and financial approvals across every branch tied to his department. They found a pattern. The same 3 vendors. The same fake invoices. The same route errors. And it wasn't just Victor and Dan. There were others, 4 total. 2 in Pittsburgh, 1 in Des Moines, and a logistics planner out in Fresno. They'd all worked with Victor at some point. They'd all approved fake charges and reroutes. Together, they'd skimmed over $2 million. Corporate issued a full shutdown of every contract connected to them. Then they started firing people. Victor was escorted out by security within a week. No warning. Just showed up one morning, and by lunch he was gone. Word spread that corporate was pressing charges. Something about wire fraud and conspiracy. The vendor companies? 2 of them vanished overnight.
No websites.
No customer service numbers. One had a P.O. box that got cleared out before anyone could question them. But the last one, a storage partner in Indiana, got hit hard. IRS showed up at their office. They froze their accounts. 2 people were arrested. It was big. Way bigger than I expected. Then it circled back to me. Corporate flew me to Atlanta. Not to punish me but to question me. I spent 6 hours with lawyers, HR, and the CFO. They asked how I found the files, how long I'd known, why I didn't report it earlier. I told them the truth. I didn't know what I was looking at until Dan pushed me too far. One of the lawyers leaned back in her chair and said, "So all of this started because your supervisor humiliated you in a meeting?" I nodded. "That's right." She just smiled and said, "Good." 3 weeks later they called again. They offered me a new job. Regional Compliance Officer. It came with a raise, a private office, and a team under me. They said I'd proven I had an eye for detail and a commitment to integrity. I said yes. I moved to Columbus. Back at the Cleveland branch, Marlene got promoted too. She became regional director. She cleaned house fast, hired new team leads, fixed the reporting system, and put a real whistleblower policy in place. The toxic culture? Gone. I visited once 6 months later. The break room was quieter. The mood was different. People actually smiled when they saw me. Jamie, the woman Dan used to harass, was now head of scheduling. Luis got promoted to senior logistics coordinator. I was proud of them, but I didn't stay long. Now here's the part one didn't expect. A year after all this happened, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. Printed email threads, ones I hadn't seen before. Between Dan and Victor. One of them said, "If she ever talks, we both burn. Get ahead of it. Make her quit." They were planning to push me out. If I hadn't acted when I did, they would have buried me. And just when I thought it was over, karma came for Dan in a way I never could have planned. He was arrested 6 months after being fired. Fraud, forgery, and tampering with official records. But that wasn't the best part. Someone leaked the story to the local news. His mugshot hit the front page of the Plain Dealer, with headlines like, "Former supervisor at logistics firm accused of $600,000 fraud, workplace misconduct, his wife divorced him, he lost his pension, and he'll likely serve 5 to 7 years." I never had to raise my voice, never had to scream. I just gave them the rope and they hung themselves with it. And me? I live quiet. I do my job. I lead my team. And when someone tries to test me, I don't yell. I just smile. Because I know exactly how much damage I can do when someone steps on my report and calls me princess. And I'll never let anyone do it again.